and make way for the guest analyst to step in and dissect, break it down, deconstruct all of the headlines, get it down, leave it all bare for you while you pick up the shreds of all of it. And then let's get your thoughts in also, because your thoughts very important as we get into the headlines this morning. So please keep your thoughts coming on relating to any of the headlines the analysts will be breaking down this morning for us on 0809 444 0981. 0809 444 0981. We expect your thoughts to just pile up there. We'll get them as we progress on, Freshly Pressed this morning. So let's make welcome Oyeyemi Aderibigbe this morning.
Good morning, Sam. Good morning, Chibuzor. And good morning, Lagos.
And then also I say welcome to Chibuzor Nwaezeapu as he joins us this morning, the man who wade through many rivers to cross to get here.
Good morning, Omatseye. Good morning, Oyeyemi. It's a rainy, heavy Tuesday.
Bucketing down from the heavens on the earth. It's the Thames of Lagos. Let's see what the papers were looking like if it's raining also, but we assure you your papers are dry. And so let's get the analysts to attest to that. Your papers are dry. Good?
Yeah, but it's raining money.
Yes, they are.
So let's pick up the first paper and let's head over to Chibuzor to get us started with this one. And so this one is from the Punch newspaper, and it says 2024, federal government plans 26 trillion naira budget, debt servicing to Gulp 8.25 trillion naira. Here we go. At this time, this is October already. And so is this in keeping with the tradition of making sure the budget gets passed January and then the financial year starts for us, Chibuzor, and then look at the component cost of this budget?
Okay, so more or less, the first part you raised is keeping to the tradition of delivering the budgets probably in December and then reading out in January and getting required approvals. Yes, the president, this current dispensation, the current government has said that it will keep up with the budgeting cycle from January to December. So we have the same thing that we had in previous times. But that's just one part of it. The major issues here, or not major issues, the major issues to look at here would be what are we spending and how much are we spending and what are we spending it on. So like Omar mentioned earlier, 26 trillion is going to be the total amount of the budget in Naira. We're going to spend 8.625 trillion of that on debt servicing, which gives about 17.75 trillion, more or less, left for other things. Now, if you look at between personnel costs and planned, we have to be careful, planned personnel costs and debt service costs. We're looking at spending about 61.6% of that entire amount on managing debt and personnel costs. I think last year we spent about 51% on debt, but I think we spent more than our revenue on last year. We spent, in looking at our budget for last year, we spent more than our revenue for the entire year on debt servicing. So obviously somebody has paid that price. The additional money that we spent on everything else came from somewhere else. Now, even if you look deeper into the amounts that were set up, and I use the word planned cost, the minister has mentioned, as Minister Bagudu, who is the Minister for Budgets, has mentioned that there will be a supplementary budget because there are things that will probably come up down the line which they've not accounted for now or they're anticipating. So you're talking about things like security, increased obligations due to the removal of subsidy. I think they said they're spending about 3.7, they marked about 3.75 trillion to take in consideration for increased cost due to subsidy. The amounts that we're looking at planned personnel costs, we're really looking at about, if you recall that in the last engagement between the government and Labour, government gave some concessions of things they wanted to give out, which include allowances that will go to civil servants. I think that was only a mark for 6 months at 5,000. So at the expiration of those 6 months, obviously, if things continue and the government insists on or chooses to continue, and I guess that probably might come into play, they would need to look for additional funds to cater for the additional cost. Now, last year we spent obviously our entire personnel cost and debt servicing exceeded our total revenues. we spent about 59% last year of our total budget on, on paying interest on loans and banks and other personnel costs. So we need to look at, I think if you look at all the numbers, what it tells us is that we're in a pretty interesting situation. I don't want to say impossible situation, where as a country, we are basically spending all that we're marking, or a large chunk of what we're marking, for servicing debt and recurrent costs on personnel, instead of and having just little left on development. And because of a lot of these funds are being taken from loans, from other sources. So if you look at some of the debt servicing costs for the government increased because of last year's because of the last government last year went and borrowed some money which was securitized. So that additional burden is going to be cut up by this government. And this government also hasn't stopped. If we recall, I don't know if it was carried, maybe yesterday we had the
1.5 billion,
1.5 billion, which was specifically taken to support the budget. So we can have an idea of where some of the money that we're going to be spending is coming from, because it doesn't look as if it's coming from our revenues.
Okay.
Despite the fact that the minister said that they've budgeted based on the $73 per barrel benchmark, and increase the production. But we need, it's a pretty tricky time and interesting time to watch as a Nigerian to see how we get this money and how we spend.
Just a quick affirmation, 29 trillion naira budget. How last year's budget was around the region of, is this any significant increase from last year's?
Yes, there is. There is I think it's about, sorry, let me get to my numbers. We
3 trillion.
That's
3 trillion.
3 trillion. It's about, so this is 26. This year is about 26 trillion. So we had about 23 point something last year.
29 this year. So that's it was 23. So that's 3 trillion. That's what you're saying.
Yeah.
So it was 26 last year. Okay, well, I just want to get the view of both of you, because as it stands right now, we've been told that the Federal Executive Council meeting has been moved from Wednesdays, which it usually would be, to Mondays now. I'd like to get your views first, Chibuzor, on that. Does it affect the effectiveness of the business of government?
It doesn't change much. It depends on how whoever is in charge can pick whichever days he wants to have meetings. They can choose not even to have meetings. So if you listen to some of the, I think the minister also mentioned that the meetings might not hold as regularly as it used to happen in prior times, that hold based on need, which is fair. It happens in all organizations. You don't need to have a meeting because they used to have meetings on particular days. So that for me, it's not a major thing. Okay. It's not major news really. It's just a decision to take.
Oh yeah, what's your thing?
I agree with him. Scheduling meetings is not an indication of performance, right? So, and the time or date of the meeting is totally irrelevant to budget conversation. So it's, but it's good that they're modifying things to suit their preferences, and let's hope that it also tells in the results.
And this leads us to your paper, the Nation newspaper this morning, the health insurance now compulsory according to the NHIA DG, telling states that so health and workers, how important is this?
Yeah, so the crux of the story is the DG is saying that, or maybe reminding people at an award ceremony for him that health insurance is mandatory under the Nigerian Health Insurance Act as amended in 2022. Already my ears are raised looking at the statistics. What the law has said is every state is supposed to have mandatory health insurance under which every citizen in that state is covered. Lagos State, I know, already instituted a scheme called Ilera Eco, where citizens of Lagos State can be registered for health coverage. But I don't know, the data about other states is sparse. Many states have actually not commenced. I think it's great that there is a reminder, from the DG, but I think it calls to question what is really being done to get people onboarded and reinforce this policy for citizens. Also, it raises the question of what has changed regarding our health infrastructure, because if everyone is registered to receive health insurance and health benefits or products, where do they go? Where do they get them from? Are we resourcing the industry in such a way that these benefits can actually be got? Are doctors and nurses and medical officers upskilled in a way that they can support, actually servicing 200 plus citizens, right? It just calls to question everything that we know about the sector. So as we try to onboard people, I think it's good, especially because what that does is indigent people who ordinarily would not have had access to health coverage and certain benefits sort of get some care, additional care, especially at the primary healthcare level, right? But it has to be a holistic reform and not just casual reminder that events, so I think that's really
interesting from your
point.
submission is what I learned also, much as you're talking about is, do you have the personnel on ground also to give out this service, this health service? It's very important. You also remind them to, as they're reminding that, get these people onboarded, but the personnel, not jack buying, can we keep them here to render these services? So Chibuzor, let's get back to you with this next story. I would also get back to Oyeyemi to give us a bit of a view on it. But Chibuzor, start us off with this story where it seemed the Nigeria's Minister of Women Affairs is not very happy with the United Nations. But for the headline here, it says Minister of Women Affairs gives United Nations, that's the UN, deadline to account for Nigeria's funds. And as a matter of fact, she would want to meet them in court. Has it gotten to this level?
So the barrister, and I'm going to call her as she's Barrister Uju Kennedy, I think. I hope I've not mispronounced the last name. She's threatening the UN that she's going to meet them in court if they don't give account of monies they collected on behalf of Nigerians from donors. Her premise is that Nigeria has several amounts of money has been given to Nigeria. Well, not to Nigeria. That's where in fact, I'm still waiting for how this turns out, but have been given to the UN to run programs and interventions in Nigeria. She wants the UN to give account of how they spent that money in Nigeria.
They would give account. Speaking through you a while for now, let's go for the green light, stop for traffic to flow by. But when we come back, I will still get in Chibuzor to speak on how we can prevent the Nigeria's Women Affairs Minister, from going to court with the United Nations after this time.
I don't know. I think this one is grass on I don't know.
Is there not a way to do this thing?
She's the person that also talked about.
Is there not a way? Yeah.
About toothpicks, about children spending their productive time.
She needs communication support. She has a lot of passion.
Okay.
But she needs communication support. She's always been passionate, which is a good thing. But she needs communication support. Then she also, how do you come in as minister and the first thing you're saying is UN, which is an NGO. There's not even a government organization. Have you done your own audits? Have you even looked at your own records?
For monies that were given to the UN to run projects in Nigeria. The fact that you're federal government does not mean that money goes to your account.
Yeah, okay.
Wow.
It's ridiculous, but we want to give, she's a newbie, right, to the role. So I guess she also wants, she's trying to show that she's working, right? But I think she urgently needs communication support because she will be more popular than her work if she continues on this.
We are likely to draft you. We are drafting you to Abuja, to the ministry. The Ministry of
the other places to focus on.
We are due back in less than 30 seconds, guys. We're smooth 98.1 FM. We're back. It's still freshly pressed where all of the local headlines is served you. And then we get to get your response relating to the headlines this morning on 0809 444 0981. WhatsApp messages only. I see a couple of messages already piling up on the platform. But before that, we're speaking Chibuzor on how we can get the Minister of Women Affairs in Nigeria to Kulu be coming down in a bit. But take us through the story.
So, like, as I was saying, she's a barrister. She's obviously more knowledgeable about this thing than I am, since she wants to start a court case. And I guess she probably wants to bring her legal knowledge into play. She wants to take the UN court to give accountability or to give account, for the amounts that have been donated for projects in Nigeria have been received on behalf of, well, the way it's been coined is that they'll be received on behalf of Nigeria, which I think is completely wrong. They've been amounts have been donated for projects and interventions to be run in Nigeria. So I don't really know how the court case will play around, but I'll leave it to her as a professional to take us through that. I'm a bit concerned because the second big point news has come out from this minister in the last few months since she resumed office. I think the earlier one was when she delivered something, I think at the Anambra
Business Summit.
She talked about how young people and students could use some of their time within school, I think a day in school, to actually do more productive activities outside their normal classroom work and stuff. And that also was interpreted or misinterpreted in a myriad of ways. So I would advise her I would not advise her because I don't know if that's the
she's the lawyer. She would advise you.
Probably, maybe that's the message she's trying to pass. She should slow down on some of these things. It will be interesting from a layman's point to sit down and watch and see how this plays out and see how this court case. I really like it to go to court. To see how this court case plays out because it will set some precedents going forward.
All right. So, Oyeyemi, just a moment. You were going to come into this, but I like to also get a bit of quoting her right what she said from the story. It says, I stand here as the Minister of Women Affairs to demand from the UN the account of all the monies they source from donors in Nigeria's name. We want to see the account of what they did. And then if you don't give us this account, at least let Nigerians see what is going on. Then UN apologize to them. So, Oyeyemi, please. Walk us through.
Okay, so a citizen could repeat the same thing. I stand as a citizen of Nigeria to demand from the Ministry of Women Affairs what monies the government has disbursed to them and how they have spent it, asking them to give account of the same thing, right? Charity, they say, begins at home. Before you start pointing the needle on the UN, what account has she as minister given on, because we must always remember that government is in continuum, right? You just have people changing, but government is one body, right? And the Ministry of Women Affairs has received money over the past how many years? At least since we became a democratic nation, 20, right? So what is the account? It's a very ridiculous story. I apologize, but I think first, the minister needs significant communication support so that she doesn't become more notorious than her work, right? And she's in such a sensitive position. There's so much work to do. I think that a lot more internal work and restructuring, setting up that ministry to become impactful. She's representing over 50% of the country, right? Of the stakeholders in the country. And it is a body of people, women that have been marginalized, underrepresented. So there's so many more critical issues to focus. And I think she needs to just desist from being in the news for very, very disturbing things and then just focus on getting the work done. Her passion is undeniable, but the passion has to be directed, for delivery.
Okay.
Sorry, I just wanted to chip in. You know why I want her to go to court? Because it's going to open up the floodgates. Once she does that, it opens up her, like you mentioned, to also be questioned for the same things. And every minister in the government is going forward also to receive the same summons. So please let her do it so that, that finger will point back.
All right. So in all of this, just before, Oyeyemi, I'm staying with you because we're going to get to the Guardian newspaper where you need to speak to some issues. But to sum up this issue with the minister going to court with the UN, I'm just suggesting if I have the agreement, the buying of listeners sending the messages. We are drafting Oyeyemi to Abuja for free since she needs communication support. But then let's just get on to the next paper. So from the Guardian says, Kano State Governor Yusuf offers appointment to 5,500 stagnated teachers in that state. And at this time, where in most times we hear the phrase teachers reward, they get it in heaven. Yeah, 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 yeah. So are we here? These ones they are getting right here on earth right now.
Absolutely good. It's a great report. At this point where we are, it's important to celebrate little wins, because we're coming from a brink of a complete disaster in the educational sector. So any effort to either improve teacher quality or infrastructure quality or even the quality of the curriculum, I believe that we must make it as loud as possible. We must amplify that message so that we can create multiple pockets, of the same thing. Education, in my opinion, is a priority in Nigeria, is the core urgency. You have high potential in our youth population, but it is a disaster if all of that energy is not cultured, not curated to have skills that can be used to transform society. You can't have 2, 3, 4, 10 millions of, the number is 10 million, but
I just hope Oyeyemi gets back, but let's get to some messages as she would get back, but let's get in a few messages here while we wait for her to reconnect now. Tonya from Magodo comes in with a message here saying, let's take in some current realities. Inflation is over 25% and climbing. Debt servicing next year will be an approximate 30% budget. Even more borrowing is planned on the horizon to essentially finance government. I really don't think the FEC needs to meet regularly or even at all to discuss what exactly. I think things are very okay. There we've got Oyeyemi back once again. Okay, so then let's get the message in here from Fabian. Fabian from Ekpe says, the government needs to live by example by cutting costs at the top, reducing their staff and extra expenses. Did the cars used by the former senators, ministers, etc., all spoil at the end of the tenure? Fabian from Ekpe. Oyeyemi, you're back, so we'd like you to close.
Yes, I just got cut off suddenly. Apologies.
Okay.
Yeah, so to wrap up the story, I said anything that is advancing our educational sector, whether it's an investment in teachers or an investment in the students or the quality of the curriculum, or more importantly, the infrastructure, it has to be celebrated. It has to. I think that move to reward 5,000 teachers, though small, is significantly important. And Kaduna State has been on a consistent reform in the educational sector, and I think it's commendable that they continue, that the trend has continued despite a change in government.
Okay, that's Kano.
Sorry, Kano State. Forgive me, Kano State.
It's okay. So I'll go back to messages and then we'll get back to our final papers shortly. But let's see messages here. Ajayi sent in a message here. The Federal Executive Council meeting is not an issue in the presidential system. The president can get scheduled briefing from his ministers on any particular issue where appropriate decisions are taken. Ajayi Olonilua from Magodo GRA Sherry. In comes Dan Okuda. It says, it's quite surprising that the Minister of Women Affairs, this is not my word, but the word of the learned one, Dan Okuda, saying, were in quote, ignorant of the fact that the UN and its staff enjoys diplomatic immunity. That's from Dan. All right, so you'd have to unmute now, right now, Oyeyemi. Let's get the next one in. From someone currently in traffic. The Minister of Women Affairs is treading on dangerous waters because there is no material basis for our claims for any actions to be instituted by Nigeria against any country or international organization. The consent of the president is required upon the legal advice of the Attorney General of the Federation. In addition, filing a suit here is not work because the UN will not submit to jurisdictions here. She's too controversial. Abbas Oladepo left this one for us, but it is not wrong for the minister to ask now questions from those agencies that collect money in our name. There are so many grants collected by agencies for something they are not doing. We shouldn't throw this away because we want accountability from our own department. No need to compare that. Same thing with MKO did on reparation for Africa that led to his inability to become a president.
Apples and oranges.
Oh, apples and origins.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I
All right.
agree.
So Andrew from Yaba says, wow, I'm taking notes from Oyeyemi, use of the English language. Queen's level. Oyeyemi, you've got someone listening and inspired this morning. What would I do with this one now? Olu from Alaka says, the critical questions for the minister made a formal request to the UN. Did the UN refuse what and for what reason? There should be, this should have happened before the minister issued threats. Well, I fall back now to this one message now before we get to the papers. Ayo sends in this one. By the way, am I the only one thinking the Minister of Women Affairs is treading towards being fired by Mr. President? What she's doing is out of tune with the direction of principal. That's Ayo from Lagos. So let's get back. Walk us through the story, Chibuzor. Stock market loses 89 billion naira. Could you do this for us in 1 minute?
Okay, the stock market has lost 89 billion naira. I think it was in this, yes, in its
As
first
inflation
session of the week. That was yesterday. And we also have the inflation figures from the NBS to 26.7 to 7.7%. Drivers for inflation are food, food and non-alcoholic beverages, clothing and footwear, transport all increased, which we know. Obviously, everything is, transport and food are closely tied.
Yes.
Also, things like insecurity also closely to play food. Food has been on a steady rise since last year, even earlier than last year. So we are dealing with issues that we're well aware of. If you look at the stock market, obviously, we are seeing that impact in the stock market. We've heard various companies who are either looking at the exposure, obviously, with the Forex, increasing rates of the Forex. A lot of companies are looking at the exposure to Forex. We had a bit of a snippet into that when we looked at the first quarter, I think the second quarter results, and we'll see a lot more in third quarter. And, production also. So it's same, it's business as usual, unfortunately.
I have to go now. Well, that's the size of Freshly Pressed on Smooth 98.1 FM. But I would say thank you to Oyeyemi Aderibigbe this morning for your time. And we just let us know when you're resuming somewhere around the Ministry of Women Affairs. We're drafting you there. That's what it is. And I say thank you to Chibuzor Nwaezeapu for your time also.
You're welcome. Thank you. My pleasure.
Do have a great time, guys. And for everyone who sent in messages and listened, we say thank you. Let's do it again tomorrow at 7:30. My name is Omatseye Atsenuwa. Good morning.